name's Kunbi Tinuoye, and I'm the founder and CEO of UrbanGeekz, a technology platform focused on a diverse and multicultural audience. I'm thrilled to be moderating today's panel discussion on cybersecurity, a rapidly growing industry. Our goal today is to demystify what it's like to work in the field, and also to give a little more insight into if you have any interest in transitioning into the industry. We have two amazing speakers, Camille Stewart, Head of Product Security Strategy at Google, and also Christina Morillo, an author, information security and cybersecurity technology leader. So let's kick off. I'm going to start off with a very broad question. What is cybersecurity, and why is it such a fast-growing industry? Either of you can kick off.
In a world where technology underpins everything we do, from how we connect with people through social media and email to how we do our jobs every day, cybersecurity is securing that technology, the systems, the data, and everything around that connectedness. And it's a lot of fun because it's directly connected to so much of your life.
Christina, have you got anything to add?
No, she wrapped it up perfectly in a pretty bow. Love it.
Okay. Wonderful. So when most people think about cybersecurity, they don't think about women of color, let alone Black women. So I would love to know a little bit about your background and how you actually got into your foot in the door. Christina?
So that's a great question, Kunbi. So basically, when I was about 7 years old, a friend of mine, her dad bought her an Apple II GS to be exact. And I've pretty much fell in love with that computer, and that sparked my curiosity for technology. From that point on, I kind of navigated my young adult life by attending trade shows, computer trade shows, learning about all the pieces of these puzzles, the bits, the bytes, motherboards, and that led me into an undergrad degree in information technology. And while I was attending undergrad, I was also interning and working at different corporations to try to garner more and more experience so that I would be hireable when I graduated. So that's pretty much how my career journey started. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Camille, let's hear from you as well. Would love to know how you actually got into the profession.
Yeah, for me, my dad is a computer scientist, so I grew up around technology, sitting in the back of his classes, tinkering with the computers we had at home. But I also knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I used to make them sign contracts anytime they made me a promise. And so one of the things I hope you get out of this conversation is that cybersecurity is a multidisciplinary field. And I was able to pull together my technical acumen and my legal acumen to carve out a space within this industry where I get to focus on the intersection of security, law, technology, and society.
Wonderful. So why don't you just tell our viewers a little bit about the actual work you do and what does a typical day look like, Christina?
So that highly depends on the role that you have. An example of that, could be you could be focused on writing documentation, implementing policies, implementing programs. You can also be, coding. You could be working on remediations, vulnerability management. So it really, really looks different depending on the role. Pretty diverse.
And Camille, yourself, tell our viewers what you actually do, just a bit more detail, what your day actually looks like.
Sure. So I work more on the strategy policy front, and my day has a lot of meetings in it, which I'm sure reminds you of many days in corporate America. But it's a lot of sitting at the intersection of our security teams, helping them synthesize and think through the threat of the moment and the vulnerabilities, the opportunities to remediate those, how to measure the risk that we're seeing, how to mitigate the risk across the business, opening up lines of communication, and kind of weaving what's going on in society and in the threat landscape into the business to make sure that we're meeting the threat of the moment and securing our users.
Okay, so what does career advancement look like, Camille?
So there are a number of opportunities to enter into the field. You've got to find an organization that is hiring entry-level candidates. And what you really want to find is an organization with an apprenticeship program or some kind of training investment that will help you gain the skills necessary to do, whether it's the technical work or the policy work relevant for the company and the space that you're in. Middle career, there are a lot of opportunities for investment. You'll hear a lot of talk about certifications to help you upskill and organizations that'll help you network and help you continue to skill up. One of the things that's really important in cybersecurity is to keep learning. As technology evolves, so does your role. So do the opportunities for malicious actors to attack a given technology. And so there's a constant mode of learning throughout your career that you should be thinking about. But yes, there are a number of early opportunities, starting from internships to early career and first job out of college, or if you're making a career transition, looking for roles like that, as well as roles throughout the levels of your career.
Christina, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, sure. So basically everything Camille said is 100% correct. The thing is, however, that it can be really challenging to find entry-level roles in the cybersecurity space. Because entry level could mean different things to different people, right? Entry level could mean, to me, may mean 1 year, but to a hiring manager could mean 2 to 5 years, right? So because of that, because of the definition, it's been really difficult. So I would caution folks to first, think a little bit outside of the box, right? Look at lateral roles that may not be directly, it may not be like a cybersecurity engineer. It could be like maybe like a cloud solutions engineer or cloud sales engineer. That will get your foot in the door. But before you do any of the above, you need to really focus on which area you enjoy the most, right? So whether that's engineering, application security, remediation, if it's threat hunting, or if it's something like policy, just pinpoint exactly where your interests are before you get on that journey.
Okay, thank you so much. That's very informative. Camille, you mentioned college. That's why I want to rewind now. Do you need a college degree? I mean, typically to get into this field, do you need a college degree? And you also mentioned certifications as well. Tell us a bit more about the certifications that are needed.
Yeah, so I appreciate Christina's add on to my comments, because she's right. While there are entry-level roles, mid-level roles, and they're labeled, those definitions are opaque. The utility of things like certifications at certain points in the career is up for debate, and there's a lot of change happening in the field. So no, in my opinion, you do not need a college degree to do cybersecurity. You do, however, need some kind of training, which is why I mentioned apprenticeship programs and internships and other pipeline opportunities that give you some of that skilling and the knowledge that Christina was talking about to kind of step into some of these entry level or quasi entry level roles. You are going to encounter phases in your career where certifications may be asked for. Unfortunately, sometimes they ask for them for early career roles, which doesn't line up because most of them require a certain number of years of experience to even get them. One of the things that this should elucidate for people is that mentorship and networking will be really important, because that's going to be the best way for you to find the roles. When they say entry level, mean entry level, to find opportunities that don't require training or certification requirements that might be expensive and cumbersome. They are out there, but you have to do a little legwork to find them. So I would say, don't let anything be a limitation to you. Don't think that you have to have gone and gotten a 4-year degree. Don't think that to work in any specific aspect of cybersecurity that you needed to have a computer science degree or something very specific. There are other pathways, but the best way to navigate those is to find people who are doing what you want to do and to talk to them about the opportunities available and the ways that you can demonstrate the skill sets and the interests that will get you the job you're looking for.
Thank you. Very informative. So let's talk about money. What kind of salaries are we talking about? I know cybersecurity is a rapidly growing industry. So let's talk about money. What kind of salaries can people actually get in this field? Christina?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because it varies based on certain points, right? It varies on your years of experience, on the specific skill set that you bring to the table, and again, on how well you are able to negotiate. So as an example, you can look at an entry-level salary, and I'm just throwing out numbers, right? Don't quote me on this. But you can look at entry-level salaries, starting at 100,000, depending on the company, of course, or more, obviously, to triple, double, triple, quadruple that, right? Depending on your skill set. If you have a very specific skill that is super, like if it's really requested and there are a limited amount of people that have this skill, application security is a great example. If you have specific skill sets within application security, you can command, very high six-figure salaries. And that it's not only about the salary as well, it's also like, just the total compensation. So, your base salary, bonus, stock options, if that's available at the company that you're, moving into, and more. So lot of potential opportunity.
That's amazing. Camille, anything you want to add when it comes to salaries and wages?
Yeah, there's a range of opportunities. What I would say is, when looking at that entire package, like Christina said, don't just focus on the base salary. There are stock options and things like that. But even in the federal government, they are doing multipliers for cyber talent. But also the way that the federal government and governments in general get to look at some of these issues is very unique. So don't negate the fact that you might not make as much in that role. Don't let that keep you from taking a role in a government space, because the kinds of experience that you will get will help you command more later and just might be extremely interesting and fun.
Wonderful. So Christina, I know you mentioned something about skills. What kind of skill set do people need to actually be in this? I know it's going to be very broad, but I'd love to hear a bit about the skills needed.
Yeah, so unlike Camille, I agree with Camille as far as a college degree may not be required, but I think it's also dependent on a multitude of factors. As a woman of color, I required it for myself. And what I mean by that is that, in a lot of these corporate companies, a lot of these corporations, in order to get your resume into HR, unless you have really close relationships with folks, a college degree is still required, right? It's still pretty traditional in our environment, in our society. And it kind of, your resume will be skipped if you don't have that, right? A lot of these like ATS systems just scan it. If it's missing, you're out. So I would say, like, while it may not be required in every scenario, don't discount whatever learning opportunities are available to you, even if that's like a community college program or something like that. So with that being said, again, it really depends on your area of focus, because the skills will vary, right? It's not a one size fits all approach. So if you are, more serious about engineering or more interested in engineering, that's going to require one set of skills. Whereas if you're interested in more policy, it's going to require another set of skills. It doesn't mean that you can't take them along with you. It's basically like your suitcase, right? Like your carry-on. You acquire all these skills, collect all these skills, and they're going to always help you, in your next role. So they're cumulative, but you want to be very intentional about understanding which area of expertise which area of discipline you're looking to get into. Because, I like to think about cybersecurity like, I look at it almost like an upside down tree. If you take a tree from its root, pull it out and flip it, you have all of these leaves and all of these like branches that lead to different areas, but they're all on this, this tree trunk. So that's how I look at it. So with that being said, there's so many different areas and disciplines that you can get into that it's really difficult to say, well, you need this one skill, right? Because then you're limiting yourself to only that area. So I would say, once you understand what area which discipline you want to get into within the cybersecurity umbrella, then you speak to people that currently work in that space and understand what are some of the emerging trends, what are some of the tools and techniques that they're using, and that will help you develop a learning plan.
So would you advise someone interested in cybersecurity to do their research and start thinking about the specialism very early in their career? Is that your advice?
It's super important because cybersecurity is very broad. So by you saying cybersecurity, it's like saying I'm going outside, right? Yeah. It doesn't really tell me where you're going. And so it's really important for you to be very specific, like I'm going outside to the subway, right? So that I can give you the most appropriate map, right? But keep in mind that, take that with a grain of salt in that, for example, when I started my career, there were no cybersecurity specific programs, right? So I had a different career path. So it doesn't mean that you have to mirror someone else's career path, but you can at least get some ideas of like, what are some of the trends and what are some of the trends that are important today, or some of the tools that are important today, and it'll give you like a step up, right? Versus you trying to Google it, right? No pun intended. Google everything because it'll take you forever. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question. I got
No,
distracted.
you did. So really, and I'm just homing in on this, and particularly for someone that's interested but doesn't know where to start.
Yeah.
Where can you go to find out? Is there somewhere, I know we've got to have Google, to actually find out the different sort of fields and disciplines and different areas? Is there somewhere that someone can go, or is it just do your research on Google?
No, so I don't, I believe it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, Camille, but I believe NIST has a career pathways website, right? Which is super helpful. I've seen a lot of kind of entry-level folks venture into that space to figure it out. But I also think that outside of that, I think that gives you a baseline understanding, but I think that, talking to people within the space, or just across the space, right? Like networking with people in LinkedIn, at in-person events, conferences, on social media sites, to just gain a better understanding of what they do in their day-to-day, and what that kind of pathway looks like, right? And what skills and certifications, if any, you will require. That's the best way, because it's more current. A lot of the information that's published online after a while can get stale, right? If it's not consistently updated. But when you speak to people have like the latest and greatest, right? So I would say that, to Camille's point earlier, kind of networking across and beyond is super helpful in this field as well.
And can you just repeat that reference again?
So it's NIST, and that's the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And it can be, you can access that at nist.gov.
So NIST is a great resource, but I'd love to add a little more context to what she was saying as well. There are some common things that you should learn, right? Like you don't have to, she's right, skill sets are very specific based on the roles. But if you're interested in this space, you should be looking to see what's going on. What are the breaches of the moment? What are the ransomware attacks and supply chain attacks? What's happening? How are people responding, et cetera? Because no matter if you're in an engineering role or a programmatic role or a policy role, those things and how the industry changes underpin the work you do every day. Also, in terms of figuring out skill sets and figuring out interest, it'll help you. You saw this ransomware attack. You wanted to figure out how the people did it and what tools they used and what was their entry point. Oh, okay, so maybe you want to do something very hands-on and you want to be in detection or response. Or you were kind of like, how do we fix this problem for everybody? Then you might want to be on strategy or policy, thinking about national or international level policies that will help us mitigate the tools that these malicious actors use to perpetuate these attacks. So there also are some hints in those common incidents that pop up that you're hearing about in the news that could point you towards skill sets, point you towards potential careers, and also are the things that you should know every day walking into work.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
be careful with the rabbit hole, right? You can fall deeply in, but I 100% agree.
Yeah, I love that as well, because obviously IT is constantly changing. You need to really know what's happening out there. So what skills are transferable then?
So I would say no matter what part of the industry you're in, being able to communicate yourself is really important. Honestly, job you have, being able to communicate yourself is really important. If you are an engineer who can speak to your program team, to the lawyers, to the policy folks, you're going to be a much better and effective steward of the work you do, and vice versa. Also, that like broad level of understanding, you should have enough technical acumen to just be able to understand what's going on, kind of understand at a high level the tools, understand what happened and how it impacted a system, a business, et cetera. And then, you should have a constant desire to learn, because as you saw from our answers about what skills you need and what careers are available, like everything's changing. Your career probably won't look the same the whole time. Every job that I've had has looked different from the last and in a different context from the last. Everything from focusing on open source threat intelligence to focusing on national security to being at Google and focusing on our users. And so you should be hungry to learn, because you will always be learning to be able to be effective.
And Christina, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with what Camille says. I also think that it's important to understand that when you say communication, it's not only being able to verbally communicate, but also the written word as well. So, being able to send an email or write a plan, right? Or write documentation, that's super important as well. But also, yeah, just to agree, like you have to be hungry to learn, even when you're tired, because you're always going to be learning. And it's not, you need to be able to also learn when things are ambiguous, right? Like you're not always going to have the answers handed to you. So you need to be able to, do research, do effective research, and, determine root cause, right? Analyze, look at, do assessments, right? And then be able to document that and communicate that, whether written or verbally. So.
Yeah, and I love that point that you're both saying about communication, because sometimes we have in our heads that techies are very nerdy and they're not great communicators. But as you say, you need to have the whole package to actually be successful in your career. So I'm really happy you actually mentioned that. So where is the industry moving? What are the in-demand areas of specialisms in the industry now? And I'll kick off with you, Camille.
Them all. There is about 500,000 cybersecurity jobs unfilled in the current moment. Wow. So I don't care if you've got a marketing background and now you want to focus that on cybersecurity, if you are a training specialist and now you want to focus on cybersecurity, or you want to skill up as an engineer or a policy person or strategy person, there are opportunities across the board. There is so much demand. So much demand. So I don't care what you want to do, come do it in cybersecurity.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a really growing industry. Really, well, of course, with everything that's happening out there. Christina, anything to add?
I second that. We need as many people as possible to fight these battles. Ransomware is only getting more sophisticated, right? And more financially lucrative. It's just getting lucrative. So we're going to need as many hands on deck as possible in order to kind of, keep afloat, right? And even get ahead. So if you're, wherever you start doesn't mean that that's where you finish. So, if you're good with data, if you're good with storytelling, communicating, finance, budget, we need you. We need everyone.
Absolutely. And it's just so important that people know that this is such a fast growing industry that has, great, potential in terms of salaries and wages and career progress. We, women of color, really need to know this. So I'm so happy that you've both really stressed that.
I love to put in there really quickly. One thing that's really important, cybersecurity is focused on people, right? The malicious actor is a person, the user you're trying to protect is a person, all the people using technology are people. And so that focus on, multidisciplinary mindset, like people bringing all kinds of skills, will not change, and it's really important. But also your diverse perspective, your lived experience as a woman of color, as a Black woman, is desperately needed in this industry. I started a campaign with a colleague called #ShareTheMic in Cyber that elevates the Black practitioners working in cyber, including Christina. And it's an important moment in the evolution of the industry. The recognition that diverse voices are really important as we build out our workforce, not as the right thing to do, but as a necessary thing to do. If we are focused on how people do this work, how people perpetuate attacks, and how people perceive the attacks lobbed at them, all of our perspectives are really important. So just another encouraging word to say, check out the program. It might be of help to you as you try to navigate the space, but more importantly, your voice, your perspective is desperately needed.
Thank you so much.
100%. Oh, I was just going to add
So
something. Sorry.
Oh, don't worry, Christina. Did you want to add, did you want to add anything?
So I was just going to add that, Share the Mic in Cyber is a fantastic initiative. I'm so happy to be a part of it. And I will say, just to add on something to the earlier question about resources, I recently released a book with O'Reilly. It's a compilation of 97 things every information security professional should know. So that was published this last month. And Camille is also one of our fantastic cybersecurity experts that, wrote a piece for the book, but it pretty much encompasses wisdom from, over 75 cybersecurity professionals that are in the space today, globally, right? So they're all over the world, and it gives you a little taste of the different areas of focus that you may be interested in. So I would say, pick up a copy digitally or, paperback to give you a little bit more context on the different areas and what a lot of the day-to-day looks like for many of us.
Thank you for that information. So what specific obstacles, face women, Black women in the industry? Because I'm sure there are a lot, particularly that, there's not so many of us there. So Christina.
Yeah. So some of the obstacles, I would start with, it's pretty much today still a male dominated field. So we have sometimes some push and pull with, some of our male colleagues. I don't say that it's an obstacle in the sense that it's going to stop you, but it may not permanently stop you, but it will temporarily stop you for a second. So, finding ways to kind of like move around that is super important. And you do that via community, right? Getting support from folks like Camille and I, but also there can be a little bit of a ceiling for many of us. And by that, I mean that because this is male dominated space, we sometimes have to prove, our skills or qualifications, our seniority over and over and again, which can be exhausting. And because of that, unfortunately, many of us do leave. But then again, many of us do stay, right? And a lot of us are determined to fight the good fight. So as exhausting as it can be. So I would say that, one of the things that I always advise is, to understand your why, because if you understand your why, that's going to help you move forward, even when there are obstacles. But if you do not, then it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for you. That's just an example.
Thank you for that. And Camille, love to hear from you as well, challenges and how you can actually overcome those challenges in the industry.
Yeah, I agree with everything Christina said. Knowing your why is extremely important. And remembering what I said about your perspective and lived experiences, bringing a lens to these issues that are extremely important and different, and owning that rather than feeling othered or even being other, because I've even been physically closed out of conversations in these like white male dominated spaces, has often been my greatest tool, right? The fact that I saw this in a way that you didn't, was able to articulate it in a way that you couldn't, has helped me to add value in meetings and spaces and in the industry in a way that someone else could not have stepped into my set of shoes. And a good example of that is WhatsApp. WhatsApp is, an end-to-end encrypted tool that a bunch of people use. And if you think about how it's used in context for most people, they just send messages back and forth. But in immigrant communities, it is a lifeline to your family. And so one of the things that we saw was cyber-enabled misinformation spreading through WhatsApp in those communities in ways that they weren't spreading in other communities. And even just that recognition by folks who could have spotted that, whether they're from immigrant communities or connected to immigrant communities, is such a value add because it changed the way WhatsApp started thinking about content moderation. So just recognize that who you are is an extremely important piece to why you'll add value to the work you do every day.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that. Diverse perspectives, we need those in the tech industry. and it can only make the company stronger. So thank you so much for that. So we've only got a couple of minutes left now. So I just wanted both of you really, I mean, you probably mentioned it before, but just a few tips, you know, real sort of final tips on for anyone that wants to get into the industry. Just say a minute each. I'll start with you, Christina, just some real sort of solid tips on what people can do to get in.
Yeah, so I will say start with number one, discovering your why, you know, mind map it, do whatever you have to do, but figure out why you're doing this and what, you know, what you see as your end goal or end outcomes. Number two, I would say to find community, you know, find like-minded people in the, or not like-minded people in the cybersecurity space and technology space, so that you understand what is going on and maybe where you want to be. And, you know, that could look like different organizations. There's a multitude of organizations, and we're happy to share those as well. And number three, I would say to, you know, don't get discouraged. You know, think about, this is a very intense field. So you also need to make sure you take care of yourself. You know, self-care is critical so that you don't burn out. So that's super important as well.
Perfect. And Camille, 1 point from you, for someone that really wants to get into the industry.
Yeah, I'll echo all of that because it was a great summation of all the things we talked about, and just name some resources. So Share the Mic in Cyber, Women of Color Advancing Peace and Security has a cybersecurity and emerging technology group under that. WISP, Women Information Security Professionals, is a great place to find some community. Black Girls in Cyber is a great place to find community and training. And Black Girls Hack is another. There are a multitude of them. If you connect with Christina and I on Twitter, you'll see us resharing their stuff, but like find spaces where you can get the support that you're needing and help you refine your why.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Christina and Camille. Very informative discussion. I'm sure that was very useful to our viewers. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
We hope you enjoyed the Women of Power Tech Summit as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. We can't do any of this alone, so thank you for spending the last 2 days with us. Thank you to our amazing speakers who were dropping gems left and right, and huge thanks to our host sponsor, Ally, presenting sponsor, Cadillac, plus BlackRock, Capital One, Merck, Optum, Walmart, Fidelity, AT&T, PayPal, and Salesforce. Don't forget that if you registered on blackenterprise.com, you have access to all of the sessions on demand for the next 30 days, so you can go back and catch it all. If you liked Women of Power Tech, we have some upcoming events you won't want to miss. Tell all the men in your life about Black Men Excel, our leadership conference for Black men, taking place virtually on November 17th and 18th. Then in December, we're back to doing it for the ladies with our Get a Seat at the Table Town Hall, which you can watch on December 2nd on blackenterprise.com and Fox Soul, followed by our very first Sisters Inc. Summit on December 7th for Black women entrepreneurs. And we can't wait to finally be with you in person again at the Women of Power Summit in March. We're going back to Vegas, baby. Registration is now open. With that, we're gonna let you relax, maybe pour yourself a drink, and get your chair dance on as we close out the day with DJ Chanel.